Hey guys, welcome to Cape and Cowl Cafe. I'm Nemo, and today we're going to be going over your guys' Spider-Man hot takes. This is going to be part 3. If you guys enjoy the video at any point today, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, but let's hop right in. Alright, first take of the day. Hugo Goji Biter says, if Miles and Peter are active at the same time in the same universe, then Miles should get a unique name. It's just confusing having two superheroes with the same name. And it feels especially silly in the PlayStation game when they're having a conversation and calling each other Spider-Man. If Venom wasn't already a major character, I would say that'd be a good name for Miles, but there's gotta be options out there. Spider Shock or something like that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree. I think the concept of Miles having different names is really stupid, like Spin and Kid Arachnid. It's all so lame, you know? And I understand the Spider-Man show for toddlers, using the name Spin for Miles because kids at that age, their brains would probably get overloaded by, having two Spider-Men at once. They can't handle that. They can't really comprehend it. But, we have tons of superheroes running around that share the same name. This is not a new concept. Barry Allen Flash, Wally West Flash, Jay Garrick Flash. Hell, there's a million Green Lanterns running around. We never see any complaints about that. There's two Robins. Maybe it's just the fact that Marvel sucks with legacy characters. I don't know. Now, as much as I do believe that not everything is racist, I do think that the idea of calling Miles by a different name other than Spider-Man is motivated by a level of dismissiveness to the character. I can't deny that, I just feel like that a lot of the people who are upset about superheroes sharing the same name aren't really consistent because we don't hear this kind of outrage when it comes to the Flash or Green Lantern or Robin or Superman. I'm just listing DC characters. Marvel really does suck at legacy characters. I mean, I guess they hate Sam Wilson too, but that's probably for the same reason. Anyway, Miles is Spider-Man. End of story. Moving on. Alright, next up, Ethan Kitsch says, Peter should trust Aunt May from the very beginning and tell her about his secret identity as soon as he becomes Spider-Man. She could almost be like how Alfred is to Batman in that she is constantly concerned for Peter, but knows that he is making a change. It would also be an opportunity for greater development as to how Uncle Ben's death drives Peter. Now, I actually really like the way that the JMS run handled Aunt May finding out Peter's secret. It was really emotional, heartfelt, and Aunt May didn't accept it right away. It was really hard for her to come to terms with the fact that her son, essentially, is Spider-Man. But I think I agree with you to a degree, because as much as I do love the way that arc was handled, I think it happened way too late in Peter's career. I mean, he was already married by that point. That is just crazy. I do think that Peter should keep the secret from Aunt May while he's in high school. That only makes sense. It kind of adds to the high school secret double life drama that, goes hand in hand with those early Spider-Man stories. But as soon as he graduates high school and he's kind of living on his own away from Aunt May, I see no reason as to why she can't learn that he is Spider-Man. If anything, it adds to her character. It gives her more things to do. And, she's not just essentially an extra, just kind of standing in the background. She's really boring when she has nothing to do. In the JMS run, she has a lot of character development, and she has to go on her own personal journey to accept this new part of her life and Peter's life. And I don't know, it's just good writing. Also, Peter keeping that secret from Aunt May for so long, for literally decades, does kind of tell us that he doesn't respect her on, the same level that he does all of the random people that find out. He's told multiple love interests, but he won't tell his own flesh and blood. That's just crazy. Now, I already know what some of you guys are going to say. You're going to say, oh, but, if Aunt May finds out his secret, she's going to be in danger. I mean, not really. She knew way before the Civil War event and the Back in Black story. She wasn't in danger at all. She was only in danger after the entire world found out who Peter was. I just really don't see how this is a problem. Alright, next up, The Phantasm says, the Raimi movies had a really poor and at times toxic portrayal of Peter and Mary Jane's relationship. Yeah, I don't even really know if they liked each other that much. It really doesn't feel like it. I mean, Peter liked MJ because she was the hot girl next door, and he developed this infatuation with her during high school. And MJ, she only wanted to be with Peter at the end of the first movie out of convenience, it feels like. All of her other options dried up, and then in the second movie, it looks like she only wanted to be with Peter at the end because she found out that he was Spider-Man. It's a very surface level relationship, and there's just way too much back and forth, and They're both cheating on each other all the time. Mostly MJ. She is for the streets in those movies. It reminds me of the relationships from Euphoria. Just overall miserable and, just terrible people dating each other, and it's just hard to watch. Alright, next up, Propeller Dog says, Peter should have organic webbing but also have web shooters that help him with aim and control to also show his intelligence. Now, this is not a hot take, but it is a damn good idea. I totally see what you're talking about. We have people that like the organic webbing and we have people that like the web shooters, and there are valid reasons for both. A lot of people like the organic webbing because it feels like a power that Spider-Man should have. If he can do everything a spider can, he should have organic webbing. Makes sense. And on the other side of the fence, you have people that really like the mechanical web shooters because it shows off Peter's natural intelligence and his ability to adapt to any situation. Also valid. So why not have both? Maybe Peter does have the ability to produce webbing from his body, but it's uncontrollable. He can't really, aim it anywhere. Maybe it comes out in some kind of weird, messy spray. It's not fine-tuned or, intentional. And so he designs the web shooters to be able to control this power, aim it, have different kinds of web shots. It makes sense, This is a really good idea. I like this a lot. A good example to compare this to would have to be Cyclops, He has the natural ability to, fire off these kinetic beams from his eyes, but he can't control them on his own because it's just raw power. So he needs his ruby quartz visors to be able to control and redirect these beams. And I don't know, this is such a good idea. This was a good one. All right, next up, Christian says, the Morlun fight during the Straczynski run is one of the most iconic Spider-Man fights ever. Also not a hot take. This is an iconic Spider-Man fight for a reason. They use Peter's inner monologue all the time in all of these Instagram and TikTok edits, and it's just, it's just a good fight, and it goes on for so long. Peter is being relentlessly hunted by Morlun, who just appears to be unstoppable. Also, the way Peter beats him in this book is just insane, so he realizes that Morlun wants to drain his life energy, so what Peter decides to do is to pump himself full of radioactive waste, essentially, and he's doing some calculations and stuff, but for the most part, Peter's like, yeah, my blood's, a little radioactive, so it should be fine. That's just insane. I find that to be so funny. So he pumps himself full of this radioactive waste, and he lets Morlun drain his life energy, and he gets a huge overdose of radioactivity, and then I think he gets shot. Yeah, somebody shoots him because he's weakened. It's crazy. Crazy book, crazy story, but that fight is just so good. Alright, next up, Mon's Edit says, Homecoming is a top 5 Spider-Man movie. That is not crazy to say. In fact, Spider-Man Homecoming is my favorite Spider-Man movie. It's just so fun, it's really hard to hate it. Peter is written so consistently in this movie, and I understand not a lot of people like the Avengers, mentor thing going on with all of the MCU Spider-Man movies. I don't like it either, but this was the only movie where it really fit, This was a good interpretation of Spider-Man for the MCU. I don't think that this would have really worked anywhere else, but damn, this movie is just fun. Come on. Plus, Spider-Man Homecoming definitely has one of the best endings for a Spider-Man movie. I don't know. Alright, next up, Vin Smoke says, I genuinely think that if Marvel focused on Peter Parker as a teacher and Miles as a student in a school dynamic, then modern Spider-Man comics would get so much better. Like that Spectacular Spider-Man comic did it, and it was good until they started focusing on that stuff OC Element Girl. I think that this could do a lot of good things for Spider-Man in comic books. I don't know why they don't do this more often, Spider-Man and Miles should be kind of like a Batman and Robin style dynamic. Not really like hero sidekick, but partners. It makes sense, and I really loved the premise of the Spectacular Spider-Man, and it had a pretty strong start. Definitely fell off in the end, but I don't see why we can't try again with that kind of concept. It really should be a home run, in my opinion. Plus, I am super biased towards Peter Parker being a teacher, so of course I want to see this. Alright, next up, Comic Fan 12 says, Ben and Kane are interesting characters and better choices for Spider-Man after Peter retires. No, I do not like this idea at all. As much as I like Ben and Kane, and I do think that they are interesting characters, they are not really, valid candidates for taking up the Spider-Man mantle. That would have to go to Miles, obviously. But also, there's one more character that I would like to see take up the mantle of Spider-Man. I really like Richard Parker from the Ultimate Universe. If they found a way to bring him into the main universe, that would be perfect. Plus, he could take on Ben Reilly's old sensational Spider-Man suit, kind of like Mayday did when she was Spider-Girl back in the day. I don't see why this can't happen, and if anything, it could be kind of like the dynamic that we had with Dick Grayson Batman, Damian Wayne Robin. You know, maybe after Peter retires, Miles Morales is the main Spider-Man, and he takes Richard Parker under his wing, and they could be a really just fun partner dynamic, you know? Actually, you know what? I take back what I said before. Ben and Kane are fine. You know, any one of these 4 characters would be an infinitely better Spider-Man than Norman Osborn. Marvel, what are you doing? All right, next up, Pigla says, Across the Spider-Verse ruined Miguel O'Hara's characterization, and unless Beyond the Spider-Verse redeems him, he'll be ruined basically forever. We'll never get to see him be a hero like in Edge of Time. Yeah, I really do think that Across the Spider-Verse is super overrated. Definitely not as good as the first movie, but also, you know, we're introducing these Spider-Verse characters to the general public. Why are we making Spider-Man 2099 a villain? That just doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, these Spider-Verse movies really are just a double-edged sword. Well, comic book movies in general, okay? Because when you make a movie that introduces a lesser-known character to the general audience, said movie is going to shape the perception of that character. You know, the general public isn't going to go read the comics. They don't know what this character's like outside of the movie. They're basing their opinion and their view of the character on the movie. And because of this and brand synergy, whatever happens in said movie becomes the new status quo. And then they start adapting that into the comic books because they want to bring moviegoers into the comic book stores. So more than likely, Miguel O'Hara might become a villain in the comics because of this. And I don't know, I really don't like it when things like that happen. It's just ridiculous. So don't change the character too much in the movies, and then we won't have these kind of problems in the comic books and in other mediums. Because right now, half the world thinks that Spider-Man 2099 is a bad guy. That's just insane. Also, I think the concept of a canon event is just so lame. Pants in the Pig says, Miles Morales is absolutely a sidekick. No. Alright, next up, Alonzo says, Insomniac's Venom isn't just random evil. Null, who controls the symbiotes, hates mankind and wants to rule the universe, a characteristic that is part of each of his creations. Like, I see what you mean, but we have no reason to believe otherwise, because Null's not in the game. They don't go over that part of the backstory. They only hint to it with the swirls on the symbiotes' heads, but, you know, from a random viewer's perspective, the symbiote is evil for no reason and just wants to take over the world. You know, we can't assume otherwise. So I'm not going to accept bad writing just because the developers state that the good part of the writing happened off screen. That's dumb. Alright, next up, Just Bud says, I loved your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but the Spider-Gwen being in Season 2 worries me. I'm just, you know, experiencing the Spider-Verse burnout. I'm exhausted, and I would love to see a version of Peter exist by himself without a million other spider people popping up. Like, I like Miles. I do think that he has his place. It would be nice to see him in the movies, and I like him in the game, in the Spider-Verse movies, but, you know, these other spider people should not be showing up all the time, you know? If you're going to make a show about Peter Parker, and you're advertising it as a show about Peter Parker, then make a show about Peter Parker and just leave it at that. Alright, next up, Eric Bodmer says, hot take, but my favorite Green Goblin look is the Fortnite one. I'm not a huge fan of the mask on that one, but I do agree that the rest of the fit is fire. Fortnite usually doesn't miss when it comes to, you know, kind of semi-modernizing a lot of these comic book designs. It looks pretty good. Alright, next up, Scarlet Saber says, Peter getting fired in Spidey 2 was absolutely absurd when you consider that Miles was right there watching. You didn't think to jump in and help him, Miles? Say how grateful you were to be protected by him while everything was happening and make the excuse that you were with him and Pete wasn't just abandoning his class, but stuck with you. Yeah, so stupid. Like, I was thinking this exact thing while I was playing through the game for the first time. Obviously, they fired, you know, Peter from being a teacher because they didn't want him to have to deal with all the teacher stuff during the game. They don't want you to have to take breaks from being Spider-Man to go be a teacher. You know, you're going to be swinging around infinitely as Spider-Man, so not having a job makes sense. Except, Peter had a job in the last game, and it worked out perfectly. Did huge things for his character, so it just felt lazy, and what a waste, you know, because Peter as a teacher is such an interesting concept, and they just wasted it. Alright, next up, Mr. Theme Song says, Jamie Foxx's Electro was never truly awful. No Way Home just made him better. Well, you see, the thing is, we don't really have a consistent Electro to compare different interpretations to, because Electro is different in every single, thing that he appears in. There's not really a classic Electro, and anytime he really appears in the comics or in games and he's rocking the classic green and yellow, he doesn't really have a personality. He's just a bad guy. And it feels like the only time that they try to do something different with Electro, they just, change up his personality and make him blue, like in the Ultimate Universe or in that 2003 animated series or with Jamie Foxx. Well, the 90s show made him a Nazi, but we don't talk about that. So it's not that Jamie Foxx's Electro was bad. I just don't think that Electro is a good character, he's barely a character, There's nothing to him. He's just a giant nothing burger of a Spider-Man villain. He is only there for the visual aesthetic of having a lightning-themed villain. That's it. All right, next up, Ray says, in the Spider-Man 2 game, it should have ended at the Venom section where instead of going full end of the world, he just disappears. It would have been super memorable to end it on a power trip and would be more satisfying for Peter and Miles after the Mr. Negative symbiote Peter boss fight, and would have gave more room for a third game where maybe Norman goes after Venom thinking he killed Harry. Actually, I think this could have been really good because they could have stretched out that symbiote arc way more, because in that game, we only had symbiote Peter for like 30 minutes. It was kind of ridiculous. But also the whole alien invasion Venom, subplot at the end, it really felt tacked on. And it didn't really feel like the conclusion. It kind of felt like extra filler, Kraven felt like the real main antagonist of the game, and it did kind of feel like there was a solid conclusion already there, and then they just added an extra hour to the game for no reason. They should have saved all of that stuff for a third game, or just cut it entirely and stretched out the content from the first few parts of the game. I feel like that would have flowed way better. All right, next up, Milex says, I think James Cameron's unmade Spider-Man movie would have been better than Sam Raimi's Spider-Man that we got. Oh, really? Alright, let me just read you some actual dialogue from James Cameron's Spider-Man script. Courtship among the spiders is highly ritualized. It varies from species to species. The male spider may circle the female or wave his front legs to signal that he is not prey. In certain crab spiders, the male will attach strands of silk to the female, tying her limbs. Spider-Man moves his hand gracefully across her, and she sees the sheerest silk webbing glinting in the moonlight. First one wrist, then the other. Hypnotic movement in the moonlight. Her arms are bound to the wall. Her breathing gets more rapid. Spider-Man then says, since the female can break free at any time, the bonds only have symbolic significance. To which Mary Jane replies, the male must be very bold to take such liberties with the predatory female. He removes his mask and kisses her. Their mouths very slowly and very sensuously devour each other. What am I reading? No, this would not have been better than Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, okay? Peter and MJ's relationship in that movie may be the worst, but it's definitely better than this, okay? This is just gross. James Cameron, you're a freak. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it all, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, and drop in the comments down below your Spider-Man hot takes. They might be featured in part 4. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.